day is September 22nd, 2020. I'm Barbara Mansley, Assistant Attorney General. We are here with the Jefferson County Grand Jury, and we have Detective Jeff Hall. You have been previously sworn. That's why you're still on the road.
Good morning. As we begin, we're going to listen to some police officer biometric footage from 4 different officers. And then after that, we're going to listen to an interview with the applicants. Take over the house.
So, beginning with let's just explain the boundary. The body camera videos that were shown were obtained from various officers who were on scene on March 14th. So what we're going to hear is excerpts from those officers' body cameras.
Yes, ma'am. The first one we'll listen to is from Officer Breonna Tyson. Officer with the second division.
Detective, the voice we heard in earlier, that was Detective Jameson.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next one.
He was taking the hallway fire to the door. So all 3 monitors are at play. Sunglass one, window better than
Yeah, at the beginning of that footage, we heard the words, "Those are my rounds," through that window.
Yes, ma'am.
And who was that with?
That was Detective Brett Hankinson's voice. That was off of right now going to Taylor Rogers.
Was it third?
Third audio we're going to hear from is from Sergeant Michael Burns' body camera.
What's this address? What's the address here?
3003 Springfield, apartment 3.
And the fourth?
And this is from body camera audio footage with Sergeant Brandon Hogan and his wife.
Subject station business with your own stations with reason. So on this area, yeah, right there. So that's all it looks like. There's this one there. But I haven't backed out until they get TIU in here. So I just didn't think that's visible. We don't see it.
Is there any windows around that way?
The only casing look like 9 mils.
He said she was shooting. The suspect said that his girlfriend was shooting me after that moment. Hey, this room right here, this one here.
I'm not.
Now, Detective, did you hear in there that Detective Hankinson asked about the window?
Yes, ma'am.
Asked Sergeant Hogan, who was in the apartment, if they found the law.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, next we're going to listen to an interview with Detective Brett Hankinson that was conducted.
What did you say you were?
He was asking about if they had found the loan inside the apartment. He was asking Sergeant Hogan, member of SWAT, if anyone had found the long gun inside the apartment. Logan. You will hear more about that. But this is,
You're going to play an audio recording of an interview with Detective Breonna.
yes, ma'am.
And who conducted that interview?
Louisville Metro Police Department's one local training union,
And when was it conducted?
March 25th. And it was conducted by,
Sergeant Angus Healy, the Louisville Metro Police Department's Public Integrity Unit. Today is Wednesday, March 23rd, 2020. The time is 15:16. We are present at 3672 Taylor Boulevard, Public Integrity Office. This will be a recorded statement from Detective Brett Hankinson. This statement is in reference to PIU case number 20-019. Present with me are Detective Brett Hankinson and Attorney Steve Shoring and Sergeant Jason Vance of the Public Integrity Unit. Detective, are you aware that this statement is being video and audio recorded?
Yes.
Is this being for approval?
Yes.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Brett Hankinson, Hankison.
What is your code number?
6150.
Where are you currently assigned?
The Criminal Interdiction Division.
How long have you been with that unit?
Since they were created maybe a few months ago.
How long have you been with the department?
Since 2003.
Are you under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or any other intoxicants at this time?
No.
Are you taking any kind of medication that would affect your judgment or ability to think clearly?
No.
The next several statements will be in reference to the incident that you're here for, March the 13th. That's Springfield arrest. Did you sustain any injuries during this situation?
No.
Did you receive any medical treatment?
No.
What type of uniform or clothing were you wearing at the time of this incident?
I was wearing an LMPD tactical vest, and I believe on the front of it says Police K9, and I believe it says Police again. It's the heavy duty ones that we're issued.
Do you have on the same uniform or clothing right now?
I do not.
Because the statutory requirements of KRS 67C 326, I am obligated to advise you of the constitutional rights prior to making any further questions.
On the back question, sorry, but I also had a full gun belt on too, with like my taser, all that equipment. Just it doesn't have any other identifiers on it. It's a gun belt.
Okay. Before we ask you any questions, you must understand your rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say and will be used against you in court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer prior to any questioning or making of any statements. And you have no present with you while you're being questioned. Cannot afford to hire a lawyer who will be appointed by the court to represent you before any questioning you desire one. You may stop the questioning or making of any statements at any time by refusing to answer further or by requesting to consult with an attorney prior to continuing with questioning or making the statements. The bottom line, you signed this, you've read the statement, you have the right, you understand what your rights are, you're willing to make a statement and answer questions. You have a lawyer with you present at this time, you understand what you're doing, no promises or threats have been made to you, and no pressure or coercion of any kind have been used against you. So like I said, this is about the incident that occurred on March 13th, 2020 at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4. Like in our words, just let us know what happened, what kind of police action that you took, and you did.
Sure. March 13th is actually my regular day off. We were advised earlier in the week by, I think, the place-based platoon sergeant that they were planning an execution for at least 4 search warrants on that night. The sergeant was requesting bodies, but he was also requesting canine, narcotics canine dogs, one for each location, and whoever was available to respond to him by email. I believe I responded to him, and I don't even know, a day or so after that, saying I was available, it was my day off anyway, back in to do the dog stuff, make the entry for the bodies. So that's how initially I was advised, because working in different platoons were really not so much involved in other platoons investigations, I guess. So I didn't know anything about the specifics of the investigation other than they just needed a dog, which I have, and being a narcotics canine handler, and then I knew they were short on bodies, so they needed that. Met at the division that night, and I want to say it was around 10 or 11 at our office at Ormsby in the large conference room. We were briefed on the specifics, targets, guns, just the normal stuff. On the board was already written out for us, the address, that type of stuff, and what locations they had broken each location of the specific people that were assigned to search, to make entry to search that were responsible for that residence. I think the place-based platoon had like one detective at least assigned to each place, and they were going to be the lead detective in each of those spots. So I was already on the board for the Springfield address, along with the other detectives I'm sure you're aware of, and we proceeded from the office to St. Andrews and St. Anthony. I believe it's a church that's near the corner there, and we sat up there. Somebody had already notified EMS rather, to have an EMS wagon standing by. And I was actually, I think, the last one to arrive in the parking lot there at the church. EMS was already there, the wagon was already there, and then I think Lieutenant Hoover and all the rest of the detectives were there. They had told us previously that we were going to execute the warrant simultaneously or just after the execution of the warrants on Elliott. So we basically just listened to the radio, and SWAT was getting ready to hit those locations on Elliott, and we were to move up and do the location on Springfield. We proceeded up the hill, parked. I parked in just a regular parking spot. Some other officers had parked in the middle of the parking lot. And I parked just, I guess, north of the building, maybe 5 or 10 spots. Left my dog in the car. My dog was never out of the car. He was in his kennel. And that's commonplace. Our dogs are single-purpose dogs. They're not patrol. They don't do patrol duties. They're responsible for narcotics detection only. So they're not trained to make entry or to chase people or anything like that. The dog is in his kennel the whole time. We line up and head towards the building, and I believe Officer Detective Campbell, I think he was the DO for the location, because I had never been there. So he showed us the building and the door. We made entry, or we made our way through the common area, I guess, of the fourplex, and past a stairwell, and then the stack kind of lined up there. I don't remember who was in front of me, but there was a few detectives in front of me. I was kind of towards the back, but it was banging on the wall or the door, both. Yelling police, search warrant. I actually yelled police, search warrant myself. I don't know if I know Metro Police or if I just yelled police, search warrant numerous times. And he was actually banging, I think, on the side of the door, because I think the whole building was like, it was a loud percussion. In that time, and I don't know who the gentleman's name was, I came out from an apartment directly above him. It was an African-American gentleman, maybe in his 50s. And he wondered what was going on. I addressed him because I was kind of farther back on the stack, so I could still see up the stairway to him. I spoke with him and explained, we were police and to go back in his apartment. He kind of like wanted to argue, I think, like, what is this about? I think he wanted a bigger, more in-depth explanation, but we were obviously still banging on the door. Whoever was up front was knocking on the door of the wall, and I think he went back in, but Sergeant Mangley actually said, just forget it, or don't talk to him, or just leave him alone, or whatever, ignore him. Something of that nature, I don't remember his exact word. And so then continued knocking, yelling, police search warrant, and this went on for probably 30, 45 seconds of banging and announcing, knocking and announcing. And reason for this, I believe when we were briefed, at the top of the board there was it says no knock warrants. I think that was because of the propensity for violence. I think that the other locations, the guns that were found prior, I think of the violent history. I think this address was also a no knock. However, we were told this would be a female was there. They knew of a female suspect. Somebody said she was heavy set. I don't recall her name, but she resided at that location. And that's all I know. Didn't know anything about kids or dogs or anything like that. Back to knocking, continuing to knock and announce. Detective Nobles had the ram, and I was actually behind him. Sergeant, so the doors where you were at, I was to the right. Sergeant Manley, Tony James, I believe, and Lieutenant Hoover were here. I was stacked up kind of behind them back towards Detective Campbell. Second constable, I don't recall where that. I know he was beside of me, sort of, somewhere, but I don't remember the exact how, because it was really weird, because when you go into the door or the common area, you can't, it's not a breezeway that goes all the way through, just because so we're kind of stuck in this. The people on this side of the door that usually stand, we'll have a cover 1, cover 2 on each side of the door, and then we'll have our entry 2 people that will come 1 and 2 after. We couldn't really do that because there's nowhere for them to stand on the left side of the door like we would at any other place, or at a normal, say, a regular standing run dwelling. So we were just kind of bunched up there in that little corner of the, I guess it's not really a breezeway, but that area, the common area. Detective Nobles hitting the door with the ram, hit it at least 2 times, and I want to say the 3rd or 4th time he hit it. You could tell it was starting to buckle, or it was buckling near the hinges, and then the 3rd time it went all the way through. The door came open, and I don't recall if the door came left or right, but I guess that's relevant. The point I'm making, he made entry. The guy with the ram will always immediately come back out. That way he's not in the way, holding the ram with nothing to protect himself, no shield, no firearm out or anything like that, because he literally is committed to the ram. So he hit the ram the 3rd or 4th time, and then he spun back towards the parking lot away so we could funnel in. And I kind of came around him. I remember coming around him like a clockwise direction, and I already had my gun out, ready, and had it raised, on the ready position rather, here, like I guess 45-degree angle. And that's when I saw darkness in the apartment, but then I saw immediate illumination of fire come, and what I saw at the time was a figure in a shooting stance, and it looked as if he or she was holding an AR-15 or a long gun, a rifle type of gun. And a couple of things, I guess, my brain processed to understand that was that the large muzzle flash looked like a large muzzle flash from a rifle. The loud percussion I got from it, and then the way he was holding the gun, or it appeared to be the way he was holding the gun, like we would if we were at the range, or whatever. The best way to describe it is, to me, when I guess on my mind process it was we were at the range shooting targets, and you know how they will literally have the targets turn, and it's either a bad guy or a good guy, you don't know, and they'll threaten. And it was literally, I saw that threat, target, and then the muzzle flash from the gun. I don't recall if I fired as I was going back, but I knew where we were at was the worst place you could be, period. There was no other, and it's described, I guess, as a fatal flight on the academy, but that's exactly what it was. There was nowhere really for us. We were all kind of trapped in that common area, because you have an apartment door behind us, and then a wall here, door in front of us, where the threat's at, and the only way to exit is back towards the parking lot. So in my mind, I needed to get out of there as quickly as possible. So I spun out and ran directly back towards where we came from the parking lot area, that I guess pathway or sidewalk, past the doorway, or I'm sorry, past the stairwell, the common stairwell. As I made the corner to my left, because I never looked back, which may have been a mistake, but I never looked back to Sergeant Mattingly or Lieutenant Hoover. I just heard John say he was hit, or maybe someone said I'm hit or he's hit. I don't recall exactly which. And then the firing had gone back and forth. I guess I skipped all that. I can hear the firing as I'm making the corner. Now I can see, as I now have a better view, I can hear them say he's down or John's down. Almost at the same time, I guess, as I'm rounding that corner. So John said he was down or said I'm hit. And then it almost is like the firing went from boom, 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 boom at the door, or when I'm clearing that hallway, to it sounded like rapid fire from like an AR-15, which in my mind at the time aligned perfectly with what I had seen. I thought I saw a rifle. I thought I saw someone in a shooting stance with a rifle, with the left hand on the gun and bracing it on their shoulder, and squatted down like in a military style shooting stance. When I made the corner, the firing as it starts to increase, I can see the sliding glass doors, the sliding glass doors, the blinds or curtains or whatever it was closed. But I can see, because of the darkness inside the apartment, I can see the flashes, the muzzle flashes. So at that time, Sergeant Mattingly's down. I believe they're either pulling or dragging him, but it sounded like a lot of commotion, like they couldn't get... I didn't know if they were getting John. I didn't know if John was down and they couldn't get his body out, or if he was... But all I could hear was the firing, and I saw the flashes. I thought they were just being executed because I knew they were helping John. Because John said, I'm hit, I'm down. And the gunfire intensified. So I was almost under the impression at the time that they were either all getting sprayed with bullets, or as they were trying to move him out of that breezeway, he was shooting at us through the wall, or them, because I now had a shot, or I now had my only option was to return fire, and I did that to the muzzle flashes. And I want to be specific about this. I had already seen where the threat was. I saw where he was positioned in the hallway. He was at the end of the hallway, and I never went in the apartment other than I stepped a couple feet in with SWAT later, and I'll get to that, but he was straight ahead as that door came open. He was all the way back in that hallway, as if his back was to he couldn't go any farther in the hallway, and there would have to be a branch off to the bedrooms. So when I made that corner and I heard and saw what I just described, the muzzle flashes, I returned fire at the angle that I believed him to still be shooting from, because I could still see those muzzle flashes and hear it, and the fire increased like almost like an automatic type weapon, or what in my mind was an automatic weapon, was the AR-15. I was certain at that time it was an AR-15. I was return fire through at that, where the target was, through the sliding glass doors, and it did not stop. I could still see the flashes. I continued to move to my left, and I don't remember if I shot moving or stopped and shot, but I returned fire, and then I continued moving away from the breezeway, and I could now see the bedroom. I don't know if it's a bedroom. The room, the next room over, which would be now, I would be in perfect alignment. I could see the muzzle flash, or I could see the intense fire flashing through, and the curtains or blinds I think were closed in that room also, but I could see it lighting up the room. That when I returned fire through that window, whatever room it is, then it stopped immediately. It was almost like whatever the target had stopped firing. So I could see, I guess, in my peripheral, now that I'm positioned outside looking at the side of my store, that they have gotten John out, or they doing something between some cars. I don't know if they fell or what was going on, but it sounded like a big old commotion, like of people wrestling around on the ground. So I knew there was plenty of people. There was nobody trapped back in the hallway now. I knew there was plenty of people to tend to John. I went to the primary channel. I think I might have got on the wrong channel, because I think I might have got on 3 and it was supposed to be 2, but I got on the primary channel and said a car number, and I said I need some cars to Springdale, officer who's been shot. And I specifically remember that I asked for the B cars that come with, because I knew we were done, all busy tending to John, whether it be getting him out or treating him. I knew Tony had a tourniquet, or yelled that he had a tourniquet. I mean, I think Lieutenant Hoover might have said that. But I remember hearing somebody. I never even turned around, I don't think, at any point to look at them, because my attention was addressed on these 2 windows and the breezeway. I thought the guy was actually advancing, but by the way, the sound of the last shots I heard from inside the apartment, he was advancing out toward us. I was afraid, and I had a super helpless feeling, knowing that I had a handgun, and even though I had my attack vest on, and this guy had an AR-15, and I felt pretty helpless. Like, there's no way we can challenge this guy with an assault rifle. So I watched the windows as the B cars started to approach. There's some weird fence in the middle of the parking lot. I don't know how or why, but there's a fence across the parking lot gate. And I could see the B car, hear the B car come up, and I could see his lights. And I think his name's Officer Combs, which I didn't know before this, but I told him to ram the gate. I wanted a car to come down to get to John so he could take him farther out, maybe to the ambulance. And I was super frustrated because EMS was there with us, but EMS was nowhere to be found. And so I called on the radio and said, please tell EMS to come up the hill. An officer's been shot at 10:30, and I think I said that multiple times. And then I repeated on the radio, maybe a couple times, that we need B cars with long guns. This guy has an AR-15. So I took off, or had the new flashlights we were just issued. I actually sat it on top of one of the cars and kept it illuminated on just a random car in the parking lot towards the sliding glass door, and then I moved over to cover some the other room windows. Because if that guy comes out or starts shooting back at us, I wanted him to shoot at that flashlight that didn't have me behind it, and I wanted to kind of stay hidden behind cover. It seemed like forever. I know it wasn't, but it seemed like forever. And that officer ended up ramming the gate like I told him to, and got to John. And I think I don't know, they took him farther away, or to EMS, maybe to a safer location. But I just maintained a visual on the apartment, and then kind of delegated spots to the B cars that were showing up with rifles. Everybody was spaced out really good, did a really good job. A couple of guys had like tripods in their guns, and everybody got behind cover. And I told them what windows were in play, or what was in play, what apartment we were looking at. I think SWAT here came over the radio. I think it was my sergeant actually, because Lieutenant Fawn is in SWAT. But I think he is the one that came up on the radio and said to me, Brett, can you send me we're on the way, can you send me pictures of the apartment, like what you have? And so I took, I think, 2 pictures and texted it to my sergeant, so because he was coming with the rest of the SWAT guys there, so they would know what they were encountering. They were briefed separately from us. They were briefed at SWAT in reference to the 3 warrants on Elliott in the same block. I don't know of their knowledge of any of our briefing or logistics at that location. So that's what he asked for, and I texted him that picture. We did a call out for anybody left in the apartment or anybody who was in the apartment, and that's when a gentleman I've never seen, an African American male subject, came out. I think he had his cell phone in his hand. Came out and we did like a felony walk back, traffic stop type thing where I had him walk back. Canine officer Nemo arrived with his dog, and I think that the guy was not he just wasn't listening. He wasn't doing things that were the opposite. He just was like, it's hard to walk backwards or that kind of thing. And I don't recall exactly what he said, but I think when the dog got there, it really actually started to listen because the dog was barking or whatever. I put him on his knees in between two cars. And I handcuffed him along with another beat officer, if I don't know their name. We handcuffed him. I asked him if he was injured. He said it was not. If he needed medical attention, he did not. And I asked him who else was left in the apartment. He said his girlfriend, and I believe he said she was dead inside the apartment. And he's asked me what was going on or whatever, and I'll refer that conversation to body cam because I think that's all on the patrol list. And I don't remember exactly what I said. It was that conversation, or you heard, needing medical assistance, who's dead? And he said, my girlfriend is dead inside the apartment. And immediately my mind was like, did we come to something that already happened? That's what flickered in my mind. Did him and his girlfriend have it? Did he kill his girlfriend prior to us getting it? That's what I kind of, in my mind at the time, thought. And he said, no, she was shooting at you with her 9 or her 9mm. I don't remember his exact words, but I'll refer to the body cam. But he said that she was the one that shot at us, and that she was dead in the apartment. The beat car, whoever it was, then transported him away. SWAT team arrived. I don't want to say at times that time's kind of a blur, but within maybe five minutes, the SWAT team arrived and they made entry and cleared the rest of the apartment. And I kind of followed in behind them, but I only went maybe just the breezeway, a couple of steps into the breezeway, and they said it was clear, and they started to back out or come back out of the apartment.
So, let's start off where you left off. You said that you came into the breezeway of a SWAT security department. Did you enter the apartment?
I think I took like 2 steps maybe into the apartment.
Okay, were you given information related to, the apartment or occupants of the apartment?
I believe somebody said there's a deceased subject here, and I could see directly where I had been prior, where I'd seen the shooter standing. There now was a female laying kind of in a slumped position, and she appeared deceased, and that was the location. But I never went up to her or made contact with her.
At that point, what did you do? Just kind of go through that as far as where you went out?
I maybe took 2 steps in, I believe, like where you would wipe your feet off, and then I think the SWAT guy said it's clear or something. That conversation happened, and I turned back around and came back out. But I never went through the apartment or anything like that.
Where'd you go after you left the apartment?
Back out to the parking lot.
Where did you go from there?
I think still remained in the parking lot. I didn't get my car or anything. I was kind of maybe wandering back and forth. I think they had already had John either in the EMS or he was gone at that point.
Did you take any more of this action after that?
No.
Did you ultimately end up in the VIU office? Where did you go before the VIU office?
It's awesome.
Did you go by yourself, or did you ever make contact with your support?
Yeah.
And at the VIU office?
I believe, and I don't know if it's in peer support, but I believe there was one person at the hospital that was from peer support, and then the chief was there, and shook hands with the chief. He said, we're glad you're okay. John looks good, or John's going to make it. That type of thing. Because the chief was there prior to me getting there. And I spoke with him there right outside John's room. I went in, John's family was there, I think Detective McKinney. And John was conscious. I think he was probably medicated of some sort, but gave him a hug, told him he was good, and I was kind of relieved to get it off.
We have a couple of photos here, and they're both in the same area. The first photo is labeled for the record, photo number 1. It is a photo of the entire area, where the incident location took place. So we labeled the actual apartment building where the incident occurred as apartment or building A or A, and then the gate for reference to B. As you see, there's I wouldn't say considerable distance, but it is a little ways from the apartment, the gate. It separates the two different apartment communities. Prior to this incident, when you all were making your approach in your vehicles, how would you characterize the apartment living community to get to this point? Is it easily accessed, or is it?
It's extremely difficult and confusing. I personally we had done a search warrant when I was in a major case a couple years prior on the street here, and I do not remember the name of it, but I remember passing it like, hey, we've done a warrant at the dead end district, and I think there's a church or something down there that's dead end. And I remember passing that, and I said, that looks familiar. And we came actually up this hill, and I'm not good with directions here. I think that's north. East, okay. We came, I guess, south, up St. Anthony maybe, and I'm not here with 3rd Division at all. Up St. Anthony, and up a hill, and then we actually came up here, and came all the way across, and then we winded down through. It's kind of like, this cannot be the quickest way. That's what I was thinking. That was maybe the last or second to last car in the stack of cars, or the caravan. But we ended up, so building A is here. I parked maybe right near the end of the building. There's a dumpster here, and I parked in just a regular parking place here. But we came from, to answer your question, I guess.
No, you weren't.
Okay.
It is a hard place to get to.
Right. We were in this kind of south, and this is where I unloaded from. They kind of pulled up more, just parked in the middle of the parking lot, like police do, just kind of parked there. But I found an open parking place and parked in that spot.
You talked about a rendezvous point beforehand, and to your knowledge, you said this, Mike Campbell was the eyes, he had eyes on the target location.
Right. He was the one that was familiar with the case. Like I said, we were kind of summoned because they just needed bodies, and they specifically needed a dog for each location. So that's why. But he was the point of contact, and I believe the VO for that address.
And this photo here, photo number 2, is just a closer up of the actual building where the incident took place. This is just so I'll identify for the record. This opening here is the breezeway that leads into the apartments in question, particularly the apartment 4. And to describe the apartment buildings, it's a 2-story apartment building, and there's 4 apartments upstairs, and there's 4 apartments downstairs. Total a number of 8 apartments. And this building is split in half. If you looked at the building at the top, there would be, because of the layout, as you saw that night, apartment 4 was on the east side of that opening, and then apartment 5 would be on the west side, and then there's 2 apartments on the north side, 3 and 2. Right. I didn't mean to say 5. So it's 1, 2. I know what you're at. So there's dwellings behind. On the one side of the apartment, and there's dwellings on the south side, so north and south, that's dwellings, apartment dwellings. So you guys are approaching the target location, and you all hear this breezeway or opening to access, to get to where the door is. Right. So as you said, you're not completely in the very back of the stack, but you're in the rear of the stack, if you will, and for simplicity purposes, we're going to talk about the door in question, apartment 4, we'll look at it as we're looking at the door, so the left and right side. So, before we ever get to the injury, you have a verbal exchange with a resident on the 2nd floor, Can you go into detail about that exchange? I mean, kind of as much as you remember.
I remember he came out and he wanted to know kind of aggressively or not friendly like. It wasn't like a nosy neighbor, it was more of a, I guess, questioning us as to why we were there, or I don't remember the exact conversation, except I told him personally to go back to his department numerous times, police, and I feel like he shut the door and then opened it right back up. And I told him again to go back to the apartment. That's when Sergeant Mattingly said, just ignore him, or whatever the case was, because he came out and he wasn't out over top of us. He was more, I could see him in his doorway, but he had maybe taken a couple of steps out of the apartment.
Can you describe him as a black man in his 50s? Probably an older guy. And when you meant older, did you mean like gray hair older, or
just he facial looked older? I don't remember if he had any hair.
So were you looking up at the top of, like, pretty further down by these steps, or were you looking?
I was maybe, as the steps go up, I was maybe halfway back the steps and looking up at him, so we can see each other and address each other. They were kind of under that part of the stack was under, so they couldn't even see him to address them. I think it was maybe me and Detective Campbell were the only ones that our company could see.
So you have your verbal exchange with the second floor resident at some point, Mattingly or whoever decides, this is drawing too much attention away from what we're supposed to be focused on. And then how long do you think you guys knocked on the house in the door as far as you're verbalizing, your police, legal authority to be there, search warrant?
I kept, some other people had said it, I believe, or announced also, but I remember saying it at least 5 to 6, 7 times. And in that time frame, it probably took, because of the exchange or interruption, I guess, from this guy, we waited maybe 30 to 45 seconds for somebody to come to the door, and nobody came to the door.
So there was a decision made by the commander on the scene that you guys weren't going to wait longer this year.
Correct. And I don't know if Sergeant Mattingly made that call or Lieutenant Hoover made that call, but they were further up in the stack than I was.
So the time of entry, or the time of force is put on the door, what I'd like to do is, I'd like to the best of your knowledge, so if this is the door, okay, and left, you have to.
I think Sergeant Mattingly, Lieutenant Hoover, Tony James. Now I remember Tony James, I forgot to say this in the other part, I think it's relevant. Tony James, when we were walking up, Tony James had a bunker, or a shield, that's a ballistic shield, which we rarely, if ever, carried. I don't even know who has one, except people that are assigned to SWAT teams. But I remember Tony had one when we were walking up to the apartment after we got in our cars. They're all to my left that I can remember. I don't remember where Miles was at the time, or Detective Cosgrove, if he's to my right or left, but I feel like he was behind Nobles, closer to where I was. And Nobles is the one with the door to his right is ramming from his left side to the right side.
So would you be in front of Miles Cosgrove or behind? Because we're talking about 30, we'll just give it, I don't know the exact measurement, but we'll do the max, 36-inch door. So it's basically about maybe if not the exact width of this table. And we know Mattingly was on the left-hand side because he had first light, right? And Nobles had already breached the door. And the door for the door handle was on the right-hand side, therefore the hinge to swing back was on the left-hand side, so it opened right up. Correct.
I do not remember.
So yeah, we'll just say that's the way that works. So at that point, we have Sergeant Mattingly, Tony James, or Lieutenant Hoover in somewhat unknown order. Now on the right side of the door, we have Knowles, who has the breaching tool, who's not armed because he has a breaching tool. Is it you and then Cosgrove, or is it Cosgrove?
I don't know if we were standing beside each other or we switched or we moved when Nobles came back, and if we moved around him. I can't say the mouse is on my right or left because I don't know.
Okay. So as the door's breached and it's opened, tell us about that again.
Sure. As soon as the doors breached, I came either from the ready or down up to the ready, and that's like I described with the targets at the range. It was like an immediate threat, and I saw a large figure and hunched down with what appeared to be a long rifle, and I saw the large muzzle blast and got the percussion from the gun. I think that's a combination of a bunch of things. The sound had nowhere to go, and the fact that it was a direct on shot to us.
So help me understand this. So I want to stand up just for a visual. So this is a door opening. We know Mattingly is somewhere on the left-hand side. Remember, always referring to it as looking at the door. Nobles has now done his job. He's out of the way. Are you right here next to Mattingly, or is it Cosgrove and then you? Remember, we basically have just enough room for about 2 people.
I knew John was to my left. That's all I remember. And when I came around, I don't know if he came in as I did or if he was already standing in that light or the opening door. So I don't remember if much, if any, from this edge of the door to that wall, if there's hardly any room at all. Maybe there was, I don't know if it's flat or there's some room for them, for Tony and John to stand off the side, so they're at least a little offset from the door. I don't know.
So at the point that entry is beginning, you see muzzle flash and what you think is a long rifle point edge.
A large figure in the shooting stance with a rifle.
And could you tell, who or what that figure was? Or did you assumed it was a person? Or?
It appeared to be a person, but like I said before, it was dark in the apartment. So I think when I got that muzzle flash, it illuminated maybe the silhouette of all I could see was a fire from the muzzle, and I could see a large figure, but it appeared to be in a military style, like shooting stance. Like it was just, they were waiting on us to get that last few hits in and get the door up to fire.
So at that point, and again, I want you to correct me if I'm saying something that's not right. At that point, you said you referenced in what you said earlier. Are you aware or not aware that the man has been shot? You just know that the threat's being used against you.
I saw the threat and heard it, but like I told you, I knew we were in a crappy position where we were at because we could not get off the sides or get out of the line of fire easily. So that's when I immediately, I do not remember if I addressed the threat with gunfire or if I just spun around and get out of there when I felt the pressure. Because I knew that was where I was going to stay in that spot much longer, being for obvious reasons. And as I'm clearing, coming down the breezeway, I either hear mention of, like I referred to earlier, somebody where John said I've been hit and they were down.
So at that point, you know that a threat has been used against you, and now that an officer has been shot.
Correct. I knew both those things prior to making this corner, I guess, on the packet.
So you come out, and then, for a visual, and for me, you have the stairwell that's open, and what I mean by open is that there's metal steps that you see through, and you now come up to this point, which you can't see it from the shadow in the picture, but the staircase comes down, and are you standing right here? I'm not gonna let you.
I made this corner, and I don't even know what this thing is right here, but
it's kind of hard to see because it's a satellite picture, but this is like a handicap. And there's not much of maybe a single step down, but you can see right here, and then this is the sidewalk. And this is just like a void area, like maybe they had some like decorative rock or some landscape rock or whatever. So, again, this is just on memory. Are you more like right here as this is after what you just stated, and then I wish to go back through again, what you did once you got to that point.
Sure, I came out, I hooked this in, and I don't remember how far I came out. I wouldn't think I would have came far enough into the lot, like to the actual paved portion, like the blacktop. And I returned, because I knew my threat was here, we were here. I returned my threat through at the muzzle flashes that were illuminating this sliding glass door right in front of me.
So when you're standing, you're literally, when you say right in front of you, it is literally right in front of you, like it's the sidewalk is attached to the patio that we're speaking about.
Okay.
So as you're standing right here, glass door, you see obvious muzzle flash inside the car.
Right. I see muzzle flash still, and this is the point where I think it actually increased, where I kind of got caught up a minute ago, because I don't think they had gotten him out of this breezeway yet, and it actually intensified. It went from, I don't even want to estimate shots, but it was a volley of shots, and then it was a boom, 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 and I was, like I said, I thought they were taking fire here down, because I knew they were on this shitty spot, and whether he was shooting at them through this wall, I didn't know at the time, but I kind of felt like they were sitting ducks. So that's when I returned fire, like I said, through here. And I don't know if I stopped to return fire or if I was shot. I feel like I shot from two different locations. I shot a volley of shots here, and then when I moved over to closer to here, those red cars parked at, I can still see this light lighting up in the hallway or bed, whatever room this is. This window lighting up, flashes and gunfire. And that's when I decided to put additional rounds through here, because I knew the threat was straight on from this door and straight across from this window. That's the last place I saw the guy shooting with the gun. And that's where I felt at that time to protect myself, to protect my partners that had already been shot. I returned fire through the window. And as soon as I returned fire through that window, the threat stopped. The gunfire stopped. Ceased.
So at that point, you just, back out, took a position to cover, and then as you stated, you just kind of fill a job. Other guys were, treating Sergeant Madeline for his injury, and you just provided cover.
Correct. They triaged him here. I think there was some cars parked here in these spots. They triaged him somewhere out here, and I think once the beat burned, I think they moved him that way. But I never paid much, and not that I didn't care obviously, but because I knew they had their job to do was take care of him, get him out of there. I also knew none of them were talking on their radio. I didn't hear anybody, so I wanted to know why EMS was still down here at the church, and we needed them up here, obviously. It was kind of confusing, I know, for everybody, the directions to get up there. And then I dispatched, as the officers there, I kind of gave them a job or told them what was in play. I also, what I kind of skipped over earlier is that I was also afraid we were going to I wasn't familiar with this complex. Had I ever been there, I don't think, to my recollection, I've never been to this complex. I did not know that this apartment didn't end here, somewhere in the middle. I was afraid this guy, whoever, girl or guy, whoever the shooter was going to go out, because I know for a fact we didn't have the back covered, which I thought was weird. Why didn't we have the back covered? I might have sent somebody around back or yelled at him on the radio, we need the back covered. But that was my concern. The guy was going to be gone out the back window because I did not know where that complex ended on that side.
Would you say you had very little information, really, at all?
Just what I gave the briefing.
I mean, what was the briefing detail? Other than, the obvious, the target, the location itself.
I feel like we had more information about the LA address. Those are pretty detailed. But honestly, I didn't, other than the names, which I knew none of the names they mentioned, I think they had their names or pictures up on the board. But I was not familiar with any of them. I never been in contact with them.
And during that briefing, maybe not a briefing, but did you all, from the briefing on, how did you all consider this location? I've heard it referred to as a soft location, a soft target.
That's what it was referred to a couple times. And I think the reason for that is that SWAT was not going to do this. They knew that she had been getting packages delivered here. And I believe they had followed a target or two to or from this place. I was given that at the briefing, but I didn't know any further anything about that. The guys I was with, we were all we're all in CID, we're all Metro Cox, but we were all kind of the older guys were put with it because this was going to be the easy location. I felt that's my opinion.
Right, so the CID is broken into smaller little groups,
right.
And you're not in the group that had the investigation pertaining to this target.
And neither was anybody there. We were just kind of a hodgepodge of people thrown together, but the place-based contact was detected.
And this location was, even the lead considered not a real, high priority.
Right, I think there was if I remember correctly, they either said the score out loud or the score on the matrix was minimal, right? Which doesn't require a SWAT consultation or a brief or a SWAT to do it. So, yes, approaching that, or especially when we were down here at the church, I guess your question is, did I anticipate it as a soft entry? Yes. And we don't use that term very often because usually it's an unknown,
right?
And then there's a high risk, and then the SWAT does that. But it was a female, little or no record, and I don't believe she had a history of any guns or firearms or anything like that at all.
Did you get much information about the apartment itself, like the little picture, the parking lot, and the building?
I believe there was a picture of it on the board it may have been in front of the board, maybe it was a Google photo, I don't know. But we knew it was a fourplex. I knew it was the door to the right, I knew we had a video. I don't remember anything out of the ordinary that would make me believe there was a reason this would have been a problematic or a tactical situation would have arisen from the briefing.
And the other guys that you were with, do you normally work with them?
I do not. They were all in, they're all in different units for me, I think. You probably weren't going to name it, but everybody's kind of sprinkled around from the airport unit to crew to DCS to command staff.
And then just so I'm correct here, I understand this, is that, you base the information you forwarded over to the patrol and when the patrolman showed up, the rifle information based off something you visually saw, which is why you disseminated that information for officer safety and patrolman officers when they responded. Is that correct?
Yes, and the reason I did that was, like you said, what I saw, 100% sure that guy had, at that time, 100% sure he had a long gun. And I knew it wasn't a shotgun. I'm kind of familiar with shotguns from hunting as a kid, and I knew it was not a shotgun. One, shotguns don't shoot that fast and don't shoot with the same percussion. And with the B cars were coming out, I did not want the B cars to pull up here and start taking long rifle rounds. I wanted them to come up mentally prepared to be able to challenge from a distance with a long gun. Obviously, you don't want the pea shooter like I had behind the car taking cover. I didn't want to put them in danger. I wanted them tactically to be safe because I knew all my guys were gone, or I felt like they had moved from here that way, either with the B car or the right. Because that was, and I felt like I was the only one left. I don't know who else stayed with me at the time. I think maybe Miles was still there, but he was off, maybe kind of giving directions to the guys coming in, because obviously the B car, you come up, you're coming to 10:30, officer's been shot, you don't have any idea, it's chaos, but I wanted them to know what threat, I knew this was a threat, this was a threat, this was a threat in the hallway, because I really thought the guy was advancing either at us as we were leaving or as they were being drawn out of that hallway, and I was fearful he would just come out with a rifle.
Do you know if anything was moved around the scene when you were out there? Just, or you guys were out walking around for safety? Was the scene altered at all?
I know that I did not know how many shots. I did not count, and I think some people actually count ahead while they're shooting, but I did not count, or no, that wasn't even a priority, obviously. But when I moved back, after I fired, when I moved back from cover, I wanted to reload. So on one of these car trunks or hoods, I don't remember which it was or what exactly it was, I kept my eyes up and kept reloaded, and then I put my, well, I just didn't drop it, I don't know, but I put my magazine from my gun back into one of my pouches, so the empty well in my magazine well on my gun belt, and so I had a full mag if he continues to come out and advance towards us.
And this is after you completed your fire.
Correct.
And you said you went from there to the hospital. Did you secure your dog? Did you take him home? Or?
He stays. No, he stays with me. He can stay back there for hours. He's used to sometimes riding home for 5 hours, not get a break. So we didn't stop and take a restroom break or anything.
So when you come back to PA, you used to ride your dog?
Correct.
Did you review the binding footage related to this at all?
No.
Not you, but like, were you able to review it in any form of action?
I don't know how to pull up I guess you can pull up other people's body cam, but I'm not real good about that, like how to do it.
Is there any questions they might ask you or any other information you have that may be beneficial in this case?
I think we have to talk about it.
Is there anything you want to state for the record before we end? Is there everything you tell me the truth to the best of your knowledge? Statement 1612.
Detective Fogg, from what we just heard there, in the interview with Detective Hankerson, to reiterate, Detective Hankerson said that he saw the figure at the end of the hallway with an AR-15.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was one figure he said he saw. Did he say that he didn't know whether the door opened to the left or to the right?
Yes, ma'am.
Then he moved around, he said, to in front of the sliding glass door, where he said that he saw muzzle flashes through that sliding glass door
Yes, ma'am.
with the vertical lines and purples
Yes.
that we saw yesterday. And then did he say that he returned fire through that sliding glass door at the angle where he had seen the shooter at the end of the hallway with the AR-15?
Yes, ma'am.
And then did he say then that the flashes continued and that he moved down to in front of the bedroom window and fired and saw flashes through that bedroom window?
Yes, ma'am.
And that he kept firing through that bedroom window, again at the angle where he thought the person with the AR-15 was.
Yes.
And then is that the bedroom window we saw yesterday with the black curtain in front of it?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he say that when he started shooting through that bedroom window, that then the flashes stopped?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
You will have questions?
Did you say both of the sliding glass door and the window in the back had black curtains over it?
The curtain inside on the sliding glass door,
That's black.
sliding glass door, it has a curtain, a full-length curtain, and vertical lines behind the curtain. In the bedroom window, there is.
No, I'm trying to see the color, so, because, like, because I work nights, so that black window, that black curtain that she has in the back is specifically so you can't get in the light.
I said the curtain in the window is black. The curtain in
The front is,
sliding glass door is not black.
yeah, but that's, I mean, he said he's going to watch this coming.
That's inside of the south
That's the bed.
bedroom. Which is United Farmers.
He said that he saw the flashes from the muzzle in the living room area, straight across the side door. And he turned the eye toward the muzzle flash that he saw. And then he said he thought that the muzzle flashes were coming from the south bedroom. So he turned fire in that bedroom window, and that's when the shooting stopped. So he also said that he aimed his fire outside, that it angled toward a figure that went far into the hall, which is far into the hall. The configuration of the walls of the house would not have dropped him to far into that hall with that projector standing outside. He could have been standing out here, firing at the sliding glass door, the sliding glass door, and there was a muzzle flash. And he said, aim toward the end of the hall, and it just, he got there.
Yes, sir.
She might not be
I'm sorry,
He said it was the south bedroom. If he was firing outside through the south bedroom, looking for the muzzle flash that he could see through there, he still couldn't have gotten to the end of the hall. I mean, I'm talking about far into the hall, not just over there, because he still can't get through walls. And man, he couldn't. The trajectory doesn't go there.
You said you saw the shooter like in the hall.
Say again, sir.
You said you saw the shooter in the skates at the very end of the hall.
That's correct.
But when he was shooting from outside here through the sliding door, aiming for the muzzle flash, that's great. If you saw it, that would work. But then he said he saw the muzzle flash through the bedroom window here, and he shot there. But he also said both times that the figure was at the end of the hall, and he didn't shot from out here and got here. Nor can he have shot from here and got here.
Well, that was his statement.
Okay, I'm just saying, I'm kind of right, right?
Yes, you're understanding it correctly.
I was understanding. Another thing, why was he read his Miranda rights with such intensity? Nobody else had had their Miranda rights read to him with such intensity.
You see the conflict.
I can't speak to that.
All of them had their Miranda rights, but
They worked on his Miranda rights over and over.
Questions?
are there any bullet holes in the living area wall between the bedrooms and the living room? The common wall between the living area and the first bedroom? Yeah, I know there's.
I'm talking about this one.
The lighting room wall.
Are you talking about this wall here?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
I guess it was.
But they could have, yeah, but trajectory wise, if he was standing outside of that balcony area, the trajectory would have been, and he was shooting towards the end of the hall, they would have been, yeah, there would have been, there would have been long furrows, I guess.
Remember, he says he was here. He was over here.
Yeah.
At some point, you still got earlier, at some point, this is part of the big picture. Yes, automatically, at some point, fire for this general area, that can cause.
Well, what I'm saying is, if he was shooting from, if he was shooting from out here, when he was shooting that way, there were the holes through the wall would have been going in this direction.
We don't want to get, at this point, we don't want to get too much into
There will
this.
be another detective testifying that
You'll hear some more specific information on trajectories and locations. We're going to take a look. Yes, sir.
Do I understand that this is the first account with him being at the holiday?
I believe you're correct for that point, yes.
All other accounts is just your mailing and
I believe you're correct, yes. And that's just, you are carrying several accounts of what happened. And so that's the challenge here, is trying to keep everything as part of the entire picture. Yes, sir.
I looked at that in kind of the real holidays. They asked him where he went after the incident. He said he went to the hospital. And they kind of asked him to speak to anyone, and I think he said he spoke to his chief. Was that about the extent of it? He mentioned that there was something like a peer person.
I believe after the shooting incident, Louisville provides a peer support group to talk to the officers involved in this.
Right, but it didn't sound like he just...
He doesn't reference that.
Yeah, that's what I was just, he spoke to his chief.
Yes, sir.
According to him, he's standing next to a crossroad. And crossroad says this guy's kind of standing next to him. They don't know they're standing next to each other, whether on the left or the right. The problem I have is Cosgrove and this guy right here said that they saw a shooter in his stance at the end of the hallway. How did they see that behind them?
That would be a question for deliberation.
Some of these questions that you have for us, we just can't answer. That is part of, you have to listen to the statements by the officers. You kind of put it together in your mind.
Okay, well then, that's on part of the question. The next question, the same question is, one of them said that they were the first person that was going right behind that one. Well, this guy says he was the first person right behind that one. If everybody was like this, and look down through the door, because ain't no two people gonna be able to get through that door at the same time. I'm not saying that they doesn't both see it, but one or the other would have to be right behind the other one to be able to see the shooter standing. And both of them said, "Oh."
Well,
You have to judge the credibility of these interviews, of these statements made, these interviews. Part of your job to judge the credibility.
yes, ma'am.
Sorry, last question I have about the stack, because we've heard this come up several times. And when they get to it later, is there, in any of the evidence that you're presenting, is there ever an official stack that was laid out in their plan that will be provided, or is it all based on their accounts?
Their accounts. Yes,
We hear from the boyfriend.
we will hear from Mr. Walker later.
One other thing about the shield, he mentions that, he said it was unusual for
Yeah, for
the
the
shield
shield.
to be there when there wasn't SWAT there. Is that normal?
Is that his own personal shield?
Detective James carried it that day. I don't know what's normal for LOPD, but what we do know now is, what we've heard is, Detective James had that shield. He was, and you know this, he was over, he was here.
Nah, he was right. That's what he
This is
said.
Detective James here.
The dude with the shield.
He was in the general area. He was here.
He was second.
But and that goes back to the different accounts of the staff. But the shield was not put in place specifically from what we've heard so far.
It was just that he had stated that he didn't, he thought it unusual that there be somebody got shield there. And that's what he said, it was SWAT.
And I don't know, we don't have this information, I don't know if
ready for the next interview. Did you obtain a copy of the audio recording of the interview with Detective Mike Campbell?
Yes, ma'am.
And when was that interview conducted?
That interview was conducted on March the 13th this year.
The night of the shooting?
Yes, ma'am.
And who conducted that?
That interview was conducted by Sergeant Anthony Wilder and Sergeant Omar Lee of the Louisville Metro Police Department's Public Integrity Unit.
This is Sergeant Anthony Wilder of the Louisville Metro Police Department's Public Integrity Unit. Today's date is 3/13/2020. The time is 06:05 hours. We are present at 3672 Taylor Boulevard at the Public Integrity Office. This will be a recorded statement from Detective Mike Campbell. The statement is in reference to PIN case 20-019. Present with me are Detective Campbell and Sergeant Omar Lee of the Public Integrity Unit. Detective, are you aware this statement is being video and audio taped?
Yes.
Does this meet with your approval?
Yes.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Michael Campbell, Campbell.
And what is your code number?
2186.
And where are you currently assigned?
I'm assigned to the Criminal Interdiction Division, the place-based investigation squad, PBI squad.
Place-based?
Yeah.
You said PBI?
Yeah, that's what they call it, the PBI squad.
I know this unit, the division was recently created. How long have you been in that unit?
Since January 2020.
And before the reorganization, how long had you been in narcotics?
For about 2 years.
How long have you been on the department?
For over 22 years. Between 22 and 23 years.
Are you under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or any other intoxicants at this time?
No.
Are you taking any kind of medication that would affect your judgment or your ability to think clearly?
No.
Did you sustain any injuries during this situation?
No.
Did you receive medical treatment?
No.
What type of uniform or clothing were you wearing at the time of this incident?
I was wearing this black t-shirt, some green cargo pants, and a black tack vest with police across the front.
And with the exception of the tack vest, are you wearing the same clothing right now?
Yes.
Because of the statutory requirements of KRS 15.520, I'm obligated to advise you that this is a criminal investigation, not an administrative investigation. However, you are not the subject of this investigation. Knowing this, are you willing to give us a statement at this time?
Yes.
All right. Earlier this morning, members of the CID unit were, I believe, executing a search warrant, and you were present.
Yes.
Just in your own words, if you just start where you think the logical starting point is, and to describe everything that happened tonight, and just kind of walk us through what you witnessed.
We were executing a narcotic search warrant at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment 4. I was going to be the verification officer, so prior to the other detectives getting to the location to execute the search warrant, we were attempting to do simultaneous search warrants on Springfield Drive and on Elliott Avenue.
So I was watching the location prior to the search warrant, the other units getting there. As they executed the search warrant on Elliott Avenue, they came down the hill on Springfield Drive. I pulled in behind the train of cars. We exited the cars. We walked up to the apartment 4, the door of apartment 4. One of the targets of the search warrant, the main initial target of the investigation, the main target of the search warrant, I believe was at Elliott Avenue. We knocked on this door repeatedly. It was dark. We knocked on the door. You can see there was a light on, like a television or something on it. You could see it from the outside window, sliding over. We knocked on the door. We announced police multiple times. And we paused at the door. Everyone was paused at the door. Then when they decided to breach the door, they hit it. I believe Mike Nobles was on the ramp. He hit the door 2 or 3 times. I believe it was 3 times, and the door popped open. And as the door popped open, we began to receive shots from the inside the apartment. I was the last person back. I was the last person in line. I couldn't see the person shooting, but I could hear the gunshots, and I could see the reaction of Sergeant Magnan. And so we started to pull back. I moved to between the 2 parked cars facing the breezeway, where I could see the door and both the sliding glass door that faces the parking lot and the opening of the door to the apartment. Everybody else starts running back, trying to get to better cover. Lieutenant Hoover was dragging madly back. There were several gunshots. Lieutenant Hoover was dragging madly back because he had suffered a gunshot into the upper leg. We stopped briefly between the cars. They tried to get a tourniquet on Sergeant Magnan. Then we moved, and there was a white SUV parked in the center of the parking lot. That wasn't ours, but it was parked there. And Lieutenant Hoover and I believe Detective James, and Detective Nobles moved Sergeant Magnan behind the vehicle. The truck that's parked in the middle of it. It was better covered. They applied the tourniquet. I held my attention on the window and the door. You could hear somebody in there, but we were trying to get medical attention to Sergeant Magnan. Somebody brought up a car. They put Sergeant Magnan in the trunk of the car, and they drove him out the front to the ambulance that was waiting at the end of the street. At that point, Mouse Cosgrove and Mouse Cosgrove or Hankinson had called for the SWAT team to come up and help clear it, but they were all on Elliott Avenue, that's on the other side of town. So we could hear people moving around. You could hear a person moving around inside the apartment. So we started calling to him, and he came out the front door. Detective Hankinson gave him commands. He walked back. By that time,
as he was exiting the apartment, several patrol uniform officers were on the scene by that time. They got him back, handcuffed him, and then they moved him to a marked car that was waiting out for him.
Okay. From your position, were you able to observe which officers, if any, returned fire?
No. I was on the back edge of the building, as in the breezeway. I didn't see when the sheriff. I could see what I thought were rounds coming out. I was in a bad position, so I backed up between the cars. So I don't know for sure who actually returned fire or not.
Do you know any of the targets of that were supposed to be in that apartment?
It was a Breonna Taylor, a Jamarcus Glover. I believe we're supposed to be in that.
So what was the first name from
Jamarcus. During the course of our investigation, which was a narcotics investigation, we saw Jamarcus was observed picking up packages from that location. He used that location as his address on some other documentation. So we thought he lived there. It was one of the places he was living there and getting drugs.
Approximately how many shots do you think maybe were fired from inside the apartment?
I had no idea. Several. It was just a lot of gunfire. I can't give you a number for sure. It seemed like more than 5 gunshots I heard. But I mean, there was a lot of gunfire. And I'm sure some of it was returning fire, so I couldn't determine the difference. I couldn't tell the difference.
Do you know where Sergeant Madden was positioned at in the stack when they were breaching?
As he was like in the one spot. He was going to be the first person through. So when the door popped open, Madden was in the doorway.
When the subject came out, did he make any statements that you heard?
He made a statement about his girlfriend shooting out, and he said they heard us knock. But I was focused on the door and if there was anybody else coming out of that door. So I didn't talk to him really. I know he was talking to some of the other detectives briefly, and some of the officers that were out there.
And once this kind of situation calmed down and the scene was considered safe, was there any discussion or did you hear other people talking about, did anybody see who actually fired the shots or anything?
No, we didn't. I didn't discuss that with anyone. And I was not in a position to see who fired shots. See the person that was shooting out.
Sergeant Woody.
Yeah. I'm a little slow, so I apologize, but on the stack we are going in, how many was in the stack?
There were 7 of us total.
7 total out there, okay. So 7 total. And there was 4 in the stack to make entry. And you're talking about door, so when I got to see it was door number 4.
Door number 4.
And it's under the staircase.
It's under the staircase as you walk into the breezeway. It's
So
on the
that's the
right.
breezeway, the staircase is to your right, it's underneath that. Okay. So you're under the stairs. Were all 7 of you kind of in the stack, or was it a few in the stack, a few in the back, a few in the front?
Yeah, I was walking up and we had stopped in the breezeway. So we weren't bunched up real tight.
Okay.
We were spread out. We knocked on the door. We were doing several warrants tonight. This one was going to be, we didn't think the target was there. This one was going to be the easy one.
Gotcha. So who knocked at the door?
Sergeant manually knocked repeatedly. And we announced police. People other detectives were saying police. We were really loud. So we knocked and announced that we were the police multiple times.
And then do you call who was number 2 in the stack?
So the person with the ram was Nobles. Hoover was up close, so he's probably the 3rd or 4th person back. Magley was at the door. And then I was the last person, I believe. So in there had to be Tony James and
James is in front of you.
yeah, and closer to Magley had to be Miles Cosgrove. He was probably 3. If Hoover was 4, Cosgrove was 3. But I was the last person. Not completely. I
I got you. Yeah. Been in some of those stacks, can't remember them all, but just kind of trying to paint a better picture.
Hoover was kind of close up there. I was almost to the edge of the building. I was just in the breezeway.
And then, so you're basically at the end of the steps.
I'm at the end of I was just inside, like at the end of the steps, where I can just see in.
And you could, so when you said you did your shooting once,
The door.
so the door pops, so they hit the ramp, say it takes 2 hits.
2, maybe 3 hits.
Okay.
Door pops up.
Door pops open, and you could distinctively tell that there was going to
Something's coming from the inside.
And then you don't really know how many here.
No, I started to move back because we weren't going in, and I wanted to move to better cover. And there's a big sliding window there.
With the little patio in the
Yes.
front there. So you slid to avoid that window.
To avoid that window, move to the engine of one of those cars parked in the driveway. The parking lot.
To cover behind the car.
Actually, I slipped. I think Hankinson Tyler, we slipped and then Magley's being pulled back.
Do you know where Hankinson was? Front, middle, back of the stack?
He was probably in the middle somewhere. He was in front of me, so when we all started pulling back, I thought he was in front of me. Headed back there.
So then you kind of maintain there, at using the vehicle's cover, you kind of maintain there as the guy gets called out, and then they're rendering first aid to Sergeant Magley.
Right, by the time that guy was coming out,
They've already, so they've already moved him out of the scene. Guy comes out, you don't hear him say, you do hear him say a couple things.
Yeah, he's talking to some of the detectives briefly. I mean, nobody's interviewing him.
Right, just
They just
spontaneous statements.
Yeah. And so the patrol person took him and secured him.
And you're kind of just still maintaining cover on the house in case anybody else is in, you don't know who else is there. And you don't see anybody else come out?
I don't see anybody else coming. SWAT, by that time SWAT gets there.
They clear. Okay. So you never actually made entry into the apartment?
No. After they cleared it, I went up and tried to make contact with all the departments to make sure they were okay. There's a lot of gunshots.
In checking the other residents to make sure they were okay, did any of them hear anything or say anything that we need to go back and follow up on that you can recall?
No, they just said they heard shots, a bunch of shots. I talked to the people on the second floor. I believe Luke Vaughn talked to people. Sergeant Vaughn talked to people on the first floor. Because he had gotten there by that time.
Is he out there as SWAT commander? Is it sergeant on SWAT?
No, he's sergeant on the box.
Oh, is he? Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, he was in SWAT.
He is.
Oh.
But he was.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
2 rows.
Yeah, but I think he was on the other ones, and he had gotten out there about the same time the SWAT team got there.
So this was kind of trying to hit 4 different targets?
5 different targets.
Kind of simultaneously? Or?
Not close together. There was 4 spots on Elliott Avenue, and this spot on Springfield Drive.
And I'm assuming because you're trying to hit them all simultaneously, they're all kind of connected within the drug trade.
Yes.
The subject that did come out, did you see him by chance? Like at all? Could you identify who it was? Or do you know who it was?
I don't know.
Once the door popped open, was there an opportunity, and you may not fully know this, the way I'm going to ask it, but was there an opportunity, or did you hear anybody give any verbal commands to anybody as far as to, show your hands or anything like that?
As soon as the door popped open around.
Okay.
It was like pop, and then pop. It was like boom, pop, 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 pop.
So, just to kind of paraphrase and make sure I've got everything, you were part of the team that went to 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4. That was one location of multiple search warrants that were being served tonight. You were there prior to doing surveillance, and then the rest of the team showed up. You fell in at the rear of the vehicles and at the rear of the stack. You all approached the door, knocked and announced several times, gave opportunity to enter the door. The decision was made to breach. I think you said Mike Nobles, you think, had the ram, struck the door. Once the door flew open, Sergeant Madeline was the first one in the stack and in the doorway. As soon as the door popped open, shots were being fired from inside. And then at that point, there was multiple shots being fired, and you're not able to determine how many total shots or how many from each specific person.
Correct.
At that point, officers began to scramble for cover, and I think you said it was Lieutenant Hoover was pulling and batting them back to cover. Once everybody kind of got to cover, you provided cover on the house. Other officers began treating Sergeant Mattingly, eventually putting him on the trunk of a car that was brought in to kind of lift and carry him out of the scene to EMS. Additional police uniformed officers responded, assisted with setting the perimeter. You all began hailing had been shot, and he had heard y'all knocking, and then SWAT had showed up and cleared the rest of the house.
That's accurate.
The gentleman that came out, were you able to give a description of him?
A tall black male, looked to be in his late 30s, late 40s.
Do you recall anything about his clothing?
No, I mean, he was clothed, he was fully clothed, but I don't recall anything in particular.
Sergeant Liz, or any other?
I thought I had a follow-up, but it slipped my mind, so I'm gonna say,
Are there any other questions that we have not asked you, or any other information that you have that you believe may be beneficial to this case?
No.
Is there anything you want to state for the record before we end?
No.
Is everything you told me the truth to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
All right, we will conclude with the statement. The time is now 06:30 hours.
Do y'all have any questions for Lieutenant Paul about this?
Yes.
Always like that. I'm right, and I understood this detective's account of the situation. He was in the back of the staff, and Dickinson, the one you heard listening, and Argo, who was supposed to be next to him, actually had moved over on the left side of the staff, and was thoroughly not behind Maggie. So when the door breached, and that lady was the first one through that door, Argo rushed up behind him. That was a fired shot. Argo was saying that he saw a person in a shooter stage and in his heart. He was saying it took no time to get to that door to see the shooter because he fell back behind this detective, this Campbell, moved over there to the patio door. There's no way he could put a limit up to that door to see the shooter stage according to this account. And I don't know why we need
That's what he said.
I just want to make sure that you can get what, man?
No, I got a question.
Yes.
He said that he heard he said that the boyfriend stated that he heard them knock.
That's what Detective Campbell said, yes.
Several times.
Yes, that's what I was getting ready to say. It's time for a break. So we'll go off record.